Yeah. Can we go back and just unpack brand a little bit? You know, this series is called Behind the Brand. We talk a ton about brand and branding. And the context of my questions are because I know people who watch this are also in startup mode or running their own thing. They're founders. They want to know a little bit how you did it. Let's define what is a brand, in your opinion.
I think a brand epitomizes what you stand for. And a really great brand has a very strong and consistent message around that. So, in the case of Nike, the visualization of a swoosh, the slogan of just do it, the constant imagery of the Michael Jordan, the Tiger Woods, the Roger Federers, conquering their thing. And then all of a sudden the swoosh transcending sport and being something broader about how you want to approach your life. So the Whoop analogy to that is you have technology that literally the world's best athletes now wear to win championships, perform at a higher level, understand their bodies. And you, the individual, you, the consumer, can use that same technology to be a better executive, to lose weight, to understand more about your body, to share data with your doctor, right? All of a sudden, it takes something that previously might have been more medical sounding or negative sounding and takes it to a very aspirational, positive place.
And you're very smart to use athletes, basically to establish your street cred, because it takes all the risk and questioning out of it. Like, is this legitimate or not? Well, if Patrick Mahomes wears it, if it's good enough for Patrick, or Michael Phelps, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, and it's really hard to fake wearing something 24/7.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to wear something on your body 24/7 unless you get a lot of value out of it.
Right.
And this goes back to
It's deliberate.
it's deliberate, but it's also like, if it's not a huge valuable thing for you, it would be a huge nuisance.
It's functional, yeah.
Yeah. Early on in the company's development, there were a lot of people who said to me, you need to pay these athletes, or you need to do a big sponsorship deal with them. Like, because two of our first 100 users were people like LeBron James and Michael Phelps.
Yeah, no big deal.
We're this tiny company, and yet we had these superstars, or this would have been like 2014, 2015.
Okay.
So a popular feedback loop was, oh, sign them, lock them up, make a big deal. And I said, you have to understand, they're wearing the product because it gives them value.
Right.
And there's no amount of money we could pay a professional athlete to wear this thing 24/7 if it didn't give them value.
Yeah.
But if it did, then all of a sudden it's making a difference in their performance.
Yeah. Although, I sort of understand the context of that advice, because that's the Nike model. It's even the Red Bull model. And maybe those are two extreme examples. No dig on Red Bull, but it's a product that's not good for you. And yet they've bought, into the market by buying sponsorship, buying athletes. Nike has seeded the market by investing in athletes, but they can back it up because their stuff's functional, and it's performance based, and so it works. But yeah, I love the approach that you're taking, because it's gotta walk the talk. Otherwise, we're not going to wear it.
Yeah, and I do think there's probably a difference between creating a brand and maintaining a brand.
Yeah.
Like if you look back at Nike's origins and Phil Knight's story, a lot of it was building the best shoe and, waffling the thing at Oregon and making it something that's very unique and something the market hadn't seen, to help a guy like Prefontaine actually run faster.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that was the origin of Nike, and the origin of Whoop was to be able to create technology that could actually make you perform better.
Yeah. Something that my mentor, Seth Godin, taught me a while back, and also one of the godfathers of brand marketing, Marty Neumeier, he said really that brand is your shorthand, like for what you stand for. And Seth described it to me like this. He said, if Nike built a hotel, we would know exactly, if you kind of close your eyes, what it would smell like or feel like, or sort of the essence of that hotel. And whether or not you have a brand, sort of depends on whether or not it's distinct or distinctive, right? And So compare that with some of the other, like say, hotel chains out there. Can you go to the lobby, kind of, not look at the marquee, look down at the carpet, and do you know where you are? And if you do know exactly where you are, then you have a brand. If you don't, you just have a logo, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. I mean, it's worth cautioning that, especially if you're creating a company from scratch, there's a lot of reasons to not try to build a brand or to not have that be a core area of differentiation,
Yeah.
because it can often be more expensive, it can often be slower. Just working with professional athletes for 2, 3, 4 years and building that whole momentum around leagues and athletes, it cost us a lot of money doing that because we were spending time with a very small market. There's like 10,000 professional athletes in the world.
Yeah.
It rounds to zero on a global population. And so it's time consuming to be really focused there. And you look at other products like Fitbit, Nike's Fuel Band, whatever, those products went straight to market, straight to consumers. In fact, one sign that I felt Whoop had a chance to be really successful was that Nike's Fuel Band wasn't being worn by Nike's biggest athletes,
Interesting.
right? Here you are paying LeBron James or paying fill in the blank all this money, and yet they're not wearing your wearable that's supposed to be about health.
And why don't you think they were wearing it?
Well, because it wasn't giving them value that was relevant for them,
Yeah.
right? But so that's where I felt that if you look back on Nike, Adidas, Under Armour in the space, and they spent a lot of money in the space, they all skipped a step.
Mm-hmm.
They skipped the step of top of the pyramid, their best ambassadors, their best athletes adopting it, and then telling that story broadly.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So you were able to get those big names. How did you find out what it would take for them to wear it?
Well, a lot of the challenges in the early years of the company were around, one, making the technology really accurate, and two, making it a product that you could wear 24/7.
Yeah. I mean, behind us here is this sort of timeline of events, right? Describe kind of what we see back here. I mean, there's a very big, chunky, almost looks like a, I can't even describe it, what that is, that big yellow thing.
Yeah, so you're describing essentially a computer box that has this huge wire coming off of it
Yeah.
that then it connects to another little sensor suite that then you would wear. And by the way,
It's chunky, like, I don't know.
the
like
box
a
is
big
probably
bar
the size
soap.
of your head.
Yeah.
And by the way, that box also had to connect to a computer.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how unwearable that whole system was.
Yeah.
But that product was the very first product in the world to be able to measure heart rate variability from the wrist, which, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So, one theme to building a company is, what is the milestone at each stage that you need to complete to sort of prove to investors or prove to yourself that you can get the company to the next stage.
So was Whoop the very first, even before all the other competitors, to do that?
For heart rate variability, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah. Oh, we were obsessed with being able to replace an electrocardiogram, which measured heart rate variability, replace a chest strap, which measured heart rate during all different forms of exercise, and then measure sleep as accurately as a PSG machine, which is like the gold standard for sleep.
Yeah.
And we spent tens of millions of dollars doing that before we ever generated revenue.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the early years of the company, for me, were spent fundraising, running out of money, and learning how to overcome an enormous amount of stress and sort of feeling of insecurity in building a business.
That is interesting, though, that you basically built the brand around HRV, right? Because why? You felt like that was the most important metric?
I thought the single most important metric we were going to bring to market was this idea of recovery. So every day you wake up, from 0 to 100%, am I red, yellow, or green? And if you think about training optimally, it's really matching how recovered you are with how much strain you put on your body. So if I'm run down, I'm going to take on less strain. If I'm peaking, I'm going to take on more strain, and so forth. And if I look back on the paper that I wrote at Harvard, it was called the feedback tool, measuring intensity, recovery, and sleep. And intensity, of course, became strain, but it played on this relationship between strain and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could measure each of those, you could tell someone what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sleep, of course, being a massive contributor to recovery. So all of a sudden you have this system now, which is very similar to the system today. You wake up in the morning, the recovery score tells you how much strain to take on. The strain is automatically measured throughout the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, based on how much stress you've put on your body, it tells you how much sleep you need. You go to bed, you wake up, you get your sleep analysis, you get a new recovery, and it restarts, right? So it's trying to live a step ahead of you.
Yeah. To me, it's fascinating because I think it's really easy from a consumer standpoint to lump all of the wearables in together as basically the same, but they are not. I mean, you can't make a phone call from your Whoop and, tracking how many steps you take and all, it's not about that.
Yeah. Whoop is great at all the things that it does for all the things it doesn't do. And, I think I've made plenty of mistakes over the course of building Whoop. I think one thing that directionally we got right was this maniacal focus around health monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
We've never let the sensor become anything other than a health monitor. It's all about measuring health. Mm-hmm. And so in a given day, we collect an enormous amount of health data, much more than any other product in the market. We've been shown to be the most accurate wearable as shown by third-party validation.
Yeah.
We have this enormously high user engagement within the app because the data is there and it's accessible and it's actionable. And, I think if we were a smartwatch and we were doing emails and push notifications and phone calls, I don't think the business would exist today.